younglings gathered around Elder Chittertail at the sacred story stump as the 3 moons rose above the whispering canopy. The elder's silver-tipped tail twitched nervously as he gazed at each of their bright, innocent eyes. They were so young, so unaware of the horrors that had come to their forest home. "Look at this," the elder said solemnly, parting his chest fur to reveal a perfectly circular bare patch. "This is where a human's gaze burned right through me. I'm the only one who has survived such direct contact." He ignored young Twigpaw, raising his paw to point out that it looked suspiciously like the mark left by the sap of a bubblebark tree. The humans arrived in their great metal eggs, which fell from the stars themselves, Elder Chittertail continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. They emerged fully formed, already wearing their artificial skins of blue and green. Some say these aren't clothes at all, but specialized organs they can shed at will. A collective gasp rose from the younglings. Little Nutwhisker clutched her tail protectively around herself. "But how tall are they really, Elder?" asked Barkeeper, the bravest of the group. Elder Chittertail stood on his hind legs, stretching as high as he could. "When I encountered one, its head scraped the lower branches of the great trees themselves. And that wasn't even their full height. They can stretch their bodies like shadow serpents when they hunt." "Hunt?" squeaked Acornleap, the youngest. "What do they hunt?" The elder's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "Fear itself. They can smell it, you see. Their massive nostrils flare wide when they detect terror, and it makes them grow even larger. The more frightened their prey, the stronger they become. That's why they're here in our forest, to farm our fear." He paused dramatically as a nightwing fluttered overhead. "But that's not the worst of it. Have you younglings seen their eyes? They glow in the dark like burning coals, and they can rotate their heads completely around, just like the night flyers. I saw one do it myself when it was tracking a group of our cousins from the eastern grove." "But Elder," interrupted Twigpaw again, always the skeptic, "I watched them for 3 sunrises, and they just seemed to be taking samples of bark and soil." "Foolish youngling!" Elder Chittertail's tail bristled. "Those weren't samples. They were feeding. Humans don't eat normal food. They absorb the life force of other creatures. Those strange crystal devices they carry, soul traps, and the rectangular glowing objects, portable fear batteries where they store our terror for later consumption." The elder leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. "And they never truly sleep. They enter what they call a death trance, where their spirits leave their bodies to hunt in other realms. That's why they build those strange artificial dens. The metal walls aren't to keep the forest out. They're to keep their spirits in." A sudden cracking sound made the entire group jump. Elder Chittertail whirled around, his fur standing on end. Through the undergrowth, a faint light bobbed in the darkness. Early pointed. "Quick, scatter," he hissed. "And remember, they can smell disbelief. If you don't believe in them, they'll find you first. And whatever you do, don't let them hear you laugh. Their own laughter is actually a sonic attack that scrambles your brain. My own cousin's friend's nestmate heard a human laugh once, and they say he started trying to gather round nuts instead of proper square ones." Searching for a word. As the younglings scrambled in all directions, Elder Chittertail allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps he had embellished a few details, but better they be cautious. After all, he hadn't survived this long by taking chances, and if his story kept them from getting too close to the human research station, well, that was all for the best. The light grew closer, and he heard the unmistakable sound of human voices. Just before he darted away, he caught a few words carried on the night breeze. "Did you see that? I swear there were some kind of squirrel things over here. They're so adorable. I wonder if they'd like some trail mix." Elder Chittertail shuddered as he fled. The horror! They were already preparing their lures. He'd have to warn everyone about these trail mix soul traps at tomorrow night's gathering. 3 nights later, Elder Chittertail called an emergency gathering. The research team from the Lower Grove had returned, or what was left of them. As the surviving scientists huddled together on the story stump, their furs still bristling with terror, the younglings crept closer to hear their report. "It's worse than we imagined," chittered lead researcher Oak Brain, her paws shaking so badly she could barely hold her observation stick. "The humans? They're not natural creatures at all. We observed them for a full moon cycle, and the things we saw—" She paused, taking a shuddering breath. "Their blood contains actual metal. When injured, which we observed after one struck its paw with a tool, the blood burned through fallen leaves like acid. But within days, the wound had completely healed. They can regenerate like the star lizards of ancient legend." "Tell them about the teeth," urged her colleague, Pinecone, who hadn't stopped trembling since their return. "Yes, the teeth." Oak Brain's eyes widened. "They have a second set that emerges during combat. We witnessed 2 humans engage in a ritual battle they called sparring. Their faces actually split open to reveal these massive teeth, and then they made the sound." The younglings leaned forward, simultaneously terrified and fascinated. "The sound? Laughter," Oak Brain whispered. "A sonic attack that scrambles the mind. Poor Nutcracker here got caught in the blast radius." She gestured to a researcher who was sitting quietly in the corner, methodically stacking twigs by size while humming a human melody. "But the most terrifying discovery," interrupted Maple Leaf, the team's expert on human artifacts, "is their true purpose here. We thought they were studying our forest, but they're actually farming it. Farming us. For our fear and adorableness." Elder Chittertail nodded sagely. "Just as I warned." "They're rectangular devices," Maple Leaf continued, holding up a crude bark sketch of a phone, "are portable fear batteries. But they also contain soul-capturing crystals they call cameras. When they point these devices at you, they're not just taking your image, they're harvesting your essence." "We observe their morning ritual as well," added Pinecone, finally finding his voice. "They consume a black poison they call coffee, a mind control potion that binds them to their workstations. It seems to give them unnatural energy. One human drank 3 cups and didn't sleep for 2 full days." "And that's because humans don't actually sleep," Elder Chittertail interjected. "They enter a death trance where their spirits hunt in other realms, yes," Oak Brain confirmed. "We found proof. Their artificial den contains special ritual chambers they call bedrooms, lined with soft material to prevent their bodies from being possessed by forest spirits while their own spirits are away hunting." The young one raised a trembling paw. But why are they really here?" The research team exchanged nervous glances before Oak Brain spoke again. "They're preparing for something bigger. The humans have built their station on an ancient burial ground. We found strange markings carved into the stones beneath their den. They're using our forest's natural fear energy to power some sort of ritual. Every night," Pinecone added, "they gather around an artificial fire pit and consume things they call marshmallows, pure white cubes that we believe contain concentrated life force, and they tell stories." He shuddered. "What kind of stories?" asked Twigpaw, still skeptical despite everything. "Stories about us," Maple Leaf burst out. "They've seen us watching them. They have a whole collection of images in their fear batteries. They keep saying we're—" She couldn't continue. "Of course, I was referring to them. Cute, Oakbrain finished grimly. It's their word for creatures they want to harvest for adorableness energy. And it gets worse. They have plans to set out offerings, seeds and nuts, to lure us closer. Why would they? Twigpaw began, but was cut off by a distant human voice calling through the trees. Here, little guys, I brought you some peanuts. Don't be shy. Scatter! Elder Chittertail commanded. And remember, they can smell disbelief. Their third eye opens when they sense doubt. As the gathering dispersed in panic, Twigpaw lingered just long enough to see a human emerge into a nearby clearing. It was barely half as tall as the elder had claimed, and it was making soft, cooing sounds while gently placing nuts on a fallen log. Still, Twigpaw ran. After all, Elder Chittertail had survived this long. Perhaps there was wisdom in his warnings. And if Twigpaw happened to return later to investigate these peanut things, well, that would be his own scientific inquiry. Behind him the human smiled, its teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Got it all on video, it said into its fear battery. These little guys are absolutely adorable. This is totally going viral. Confidence inspires its victims, and they collectively create something tremendous. Or, to put it more lightly, thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. Feel free to comment and share this story too. It helps the channel grow. Let's make this channel huge together.